reports. You know, and you got like.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Like this place is not bad. But that's winter.
I see we have a full board.
Okay, I was just checking. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February work session for the town of Upper Marlboro. It's February 23rd, 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
President Linda Penoyer.
Present.
Commissioner Janice Duckett.
I'm sorry, here, present.
Commissioner Sarah Franklin.
I'm here. And
Dave Williams, Town Clerk, all here.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First up on our agenda is the employee handbook review and HR update. Kyle, do you want to kind of walk us through this for the moment?
Absolutely, Mayor. Tonight we have Chris joining us from Surety, our HR firm. They've been busy at work reviewing our handbook. And as you can see on the screen, there's some updates that we've been working through with them. Both myself and Mr. William Morgan have been moving through it. And I guess I'll just turn it over to Chris if he wants to just give a quick overview, and if any commissioners have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns. But this will probably be up again at the March work session when we have an actual full handbook ready to go, a draft handbook, and then approve it at the April town meeting is the timeline for that. But I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Kyle, and good evening, Mayor and commissioners and staff. Hope everyone is doing well. For the record, I'm Chris Lawson with Insurity, Principal Advisor and HR Consultant, and I believe I have at least one or maybe two of our staff, Terry Mosley, who's our Compliance Officer, a part of the call, and perhaps Crystal Henderson, although she may be a little late coming on this evening due to a class. So we have gone through your handbook pretty thoroughly from start to finish, and we really don't have any changes in terms of the structure and the content. You have a very clean, clear, concise policy. There are no state or federal policy requirements out of compliance. Terry may want to touch on that as we move through this overview. Your Maryland Sick and Safe Leave policy is in order. You have an ADA policy that's all in order. There's no Family Medical Leave Act policy requirement due to your under 50 size employer group. But what we did also do is after we go through policy to make sure that everything is what it should be on the state and federal level, we then go through for process and procedure. And the reason we do that is because we want to make sure that staff understands process and procedure. And as your human resource administration firm, required to respond to exempt or non-exempt staff, that we understand all of your process and procedures. So many of the items that you see on the screen are, many of the items that you see on the screen are, looks like something's missing, but hold on, let me, are basically clarification. The first series of items you see here, where it has page 4 through page 18, those are more clarification questions. We went through all of your handbook with Kyle and Mr. Morgan. So we put this together just so you can see what things we were looking at. We've received answers to all of the questions that are there. I don't know to what extent you want to maybe cover some of these, but we understand the answers. We understand the whys. We, do have a couple of recommendations. And then over here on the right where it says request for information, these are just items that are need to have. Vacation accrual chart. We don't know when an employee may want to talk about anything pertaining to vacation. We want to make sure that, the application that you're using, we understand that with your annexation goals coming up, that you may have, 3 or 4 or more employees that may be coming on. So we just want to make sure that, the application, we know it is intact, but, it's our job to review. Your policy cited a risk management manual. So we assume that if you are citing it in your employee manual, that's something that we need to understand and be apprised of. Simple things like just a copy of your payroll calendar, which I believe we already have that one as well. And just on page 35, we were, interested in your outside employment, and there was a mention of a copy of your ordinance ethics, copy of the secondary employment agreement. So because they're there, we want to review those as well in the event that we're called upon to administer in any way. So we think that as long as we have these items in place and are apprised of how they work and all for the town, that we're in pretty good shape. I know that we'll be working on your online portal. Once you say it's okay to cast your employee manual, we'll go ahead and do that and build all the other tangibles and documents and all as they are required within the portal for employees and managers alike to access. So that's kind of just a brief overview of where we are and some of the items that we've been covering with Kyle and Mr. Morgan. Terry, I don't know if you have any more to add to that in terms of compliance.
Oh, good evening, Mayor and Commissioner and all. Chris pretty much covered it all from a compliance standpoint. You hit all the boxes for me. And again, Chris's review and our review was just to make sure from an administration standpoint, we are clear on certain things like, does the 90-day probation apply to all employees? Are you really upholding that? And if not, do we remove those type of things from the handbook? So we've talked through most of these items, and I think, unless there's more input to be given, we're ready to make those corrections, or those updates, should I say.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, thank you, Terry. With that said, I don't know if there are any questions on, our questioning for clarification and or requests for information. If not, and you all approve your handbook as is, we have everything that is before you. Kyle and Mr. Morgan have answered all the questions and provided us with at least 3 of the 5 documents. So request for information over here, but I know those are coming.
I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Clausen, thank you. This is Commissioner Duckett. In terms of the forms, like manager forms, I would say daily operation forms, administrative, such as job descriptions, evaluations, performance reviews, will that information be stored as well? Is that information that's going to be prepared for the town as well? Yeah. And if so, where would we find those docs? Is that going to be on the website? And then additionally, I should say, will the town be at least maybe given some training on which forms to use, maybe those that are not really aware of which forms to use when and so forth?
Yes, that's a good point. Let me pull up my other document. We covered all of that. And you touched on job descriptions. That is one of the deliverables we're still waiting on. Looks like some items might be missing on this document. Page 11, we basically question if the job descriptions are up to date, employees updated, and a copy made available to HR. Once we get those, we recommend that we're not creating your job descriptions. We're collaborating with you and helping you to develop them, legally and within the scope of what a person can or can't do within a particular job. So yes, we definitely are still working with you there. Evaluations would also, play a part in that. You had two performance areas within your policy, and we had questioned if one supersedes the other. That's something that we need to have a discussion on as well. We also, to your question on training, you hit it on the head. Those are the areas that we, at some point, once there's nothing wrong with what you're saying in the handbook, but at some point, we do recommend having a session with your managers and supervisors to just make sure that they're clear on performance management, the appraisal process. A lot of what you have in here, if you're going to be sharing this handbook with everyone, I think it's important for managers and supervisors to have already ironed out some of the goals and the process as to how this works. You have a lot of areas in here that if an employee, I know that, for myself anyway, and that's kind of biased since I'm an HR professional, I know that this is the process that, managers and supervisors are going to undergo with me, but it's important to make sure that you're buttoned up. And that is something that we can do at any point, even after, because you already have employees working by this policy. We're just saying that, it's important that we have a session, 2-hour session, whatever, is budgeted and what we think might be needed to really work through it. It's important, as you've brought up, to make sure that, managers have been trained on these areas. You had two areas again on your performance. One was performance evaluations, and then the other was the performance goals and the system in which you use and the weights and all that you use. And I just kind of thought that, the two need to marry up. So sorry for such a long answer, but. Yeah.
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then also just for the commissioners, so we're getting the handbook through now. Will and I are working on the job descriptions, tweaking them, and then we'll be sending them to the department heads for their feedback and engage with staff. And then from there, the job descriptions will go to Insurity for some final reviews before they come to the board. Hopefully at the March work session, we'll be looking at a draft handbook and draft job descriptions for you to all approve at the April town meeting. So that's the timeline for all those. And once that's approved, once we get the job descriptions and the handbook done, we're going to be doing performance evaluations at that point, scheduling those and working with Insurity on that. So we're keeping them busy for the next couple months.
Is it also on the schedule to get it back to the department heads for their review? I don't know if they've had a chance to actually review that and get those changes to you first.
Yeah, so we're sending it to them first. After Will and I look at them, they're going to go to the department heads before they go to Insurity. So yeah, Will and I are just kind of putting the basics together so the department heads can focus on the actual content and make sure that the jobs are being carried out in those areas. And then once the department heads have that feedback, they'll go to Insurity. And then obviously the department heads are on the work session when they're discussed with the board for that final step. So they'll be present as you guys are working through any issues you see on them or anything like that, but they'll be in the loop every step of the way.
Yeah.
So if you can give them a timeline, or at least us also about that, like how soon we could get that, you know what I'm saying? To the department's head, to the department heads for review. So, I mean, because it's kind of like we've been kind of talking about some of these things for some months, you know, prior to a surety. And I thought that we would kind of have some of these things buttoned up so that by the time the surety got on, we could present them with a nice package of the issues or concerns that we had.
Okay. Is there a particular timeline? I know I heard Kyle say the March work session. I'm not sure when you're going to be able to reach your supervisors and managers for their review, but I'm pretty sure upon completion of that, you know, from everything we're looking at and all the discussion we've had and the answers that we've acquired from you, we're not looking at more than probably 2 weeks to be able to respond back, and probably you know, even some level of training, maybe through a Zoom, private Zoom meeting. So we would just need to know you know, what kind of timeline for that portion, but it doesn't stop anything. I don't think you're in a situation where it has to stop anything. These are sometimes areas that need to be restated and revisited annually, because sometimes you have positions that start off one way and have one set of responsibilities. And as the organization changes, for example, or, you know, conditions change, you know, that performance grid needs to marry up with it. So these are areas that, you know, can and oftentimes be revisited on an annual basis. Anyway.
That's awesome, Mr. Clausen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. No problem. Is there?
I did just have one other question. I don't know if everyone else realized this, but it came to my attention after we passed the vacation accrual that in that document, even though we said that we wanted to make sure that existing staff had the same amount of vacation that they started with, that we wound up giving them less vacation than they started with. So I was hoping we might be able to fix that in this handbook rewrite. If we could just see what everyone was earning for vacation in, I think it was June or July, but because we had one handbook and then we went back to another handbook, and just kind of grandfather our current staff in, because they basically were accruing vacation and then they were accruing a lot less vacation, and then we tried to fix it and they're still not accruing what they came in on, and that's just not good for morale. So.
Yeah, that was included in a document Will sent over to Insurity today. It had the vacation accrual and it had a grandfather clause in there, so language we can copy and paste. And it pretty much said that they're grandfathered in until they hit their 5-year anniversary with the town, and then they go from the 4 hour, they should have been getting 5 hours. Right now, anyone hired will start at 4 hours for vacation and 4 hours for sick. And then once they hit 5 years, it jumps up to 6 hours. So pretty much anyone's grandfathered. So they're going to get 5 hours up until they hit their 5-year anniversary, and then they get 6 and they're back on the schedule. So that was information we sent over to Insurity.
Great.
We'll make sure that's no problem. I know you've been championing that a while, so we drafted that language a week ago and got it over to them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I was just getting back to my notes, but you pretty much just covered it.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say something too, but Kyle already took care of it.
All right. Yeah, that was one of the question areas that we had as well. So. Okay.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing that I could say that I feel is worthy of saying is that I know you all have given us the green light on managing your fringe benefits. Thank you first and foremost. We did get confirmation back from Chesapeake, at least on the risk insurance, your workers' compensation. So that is in place. I spoke to Kyle earlier with regards to the medical insurance provider, Care First, that if, you know, we were to get a copy of the letter from you, we could probably advance that to where it needs to be. Right now, Care First is like really inundated, you know, due to the pandemic and all. And so things are moving a little slow, and we don't want to you know, not have things in order. But all of that in place. And to conclude on that, I think once we get everything finalized, that it wouldn't hurt to have just a limited benefit description within the policy as well.
Thanks, Chris. And I know I'll work with Will to make sure you guys get I know we've mailed the letter, but we'll make sure you get an electronic version of the letter that was mailed, so that I know you probably have some better contacts in Care First, so you can just email it off to.
Yeah.
Make sure we can get that to you tomorrow.
Yeah, kind of move it along. Once they get it, they'll open up and we'll be able to have all of your summaries to make sure that you have on hand your required essential benefit summaries that are required to be on hand if an employee, you know, seeks a copy, although, you know, we'd like to at some point communicate to employees where they can create online access for themselves. We just think it's such a great, easy tool. Self-help. It doesn't mean that we're, you know, as a township not able to still assist them, but, you know, these are just the little things that kind of help quieten and soften the any concerns that might be out there.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for being on board this evening and being willing to talk with us. I know you put in a lot of work so far, and I appreciate that. And we will most assuredly be getting back with you with some of these things that you do need. And hopefully we can get this squared away sooner rather than later.
Yep, absolutely. We'll commit to that. Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for hopping on, Chris. We appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. All right. You all have a good evening.
You too.
Take care.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is the FY 2022 budget planning priorities timeline. This is a board discussion. Okay, you've all, you've all received this, so Kyle, if you want to just touch base on it.
Absolutely. So I just put a quick calendar together. I worked with Will to put this together. It's not anything set in stone. If the board has any changes, we can discuss it, but we definitely want to publish it on the town website so that residents understand the timeline for the budget and to have that ability. So just to give them an idea, because we have discussed with the board about adding an extra budget work session, 3 extra budget work sessions, 1 for each March, April, and May on the 3rd Tuesday during the day. Those are just extra ones built in, like a lot of other municipalities do, to make sure there's plenty of time for discussion for the board and that the regular work sessions and town meetings are not inundated with both budget and regular business. But of course, as you can see in the calendar, the budget's so big, we're trying to get conversations out of it that it does kind of flow into the other meetings as well, especially as we start introducing some different ordinances, such as the actual budget ordinance and whatnot. So I just have that in there. And if any commissioners have any issues with kind of the plans moving forward, but I know before the first meeting, before the first budget meeting on March 16th, we'll definitely be having internal discussions. I know Will's already been speaking with some department heads, getting stuff together, and then we'll sit down with the mayor and the treasurer to get some basic items lined up. And then you can see each work session kind of has a different thing to it. The first one talking about anticipated revenue and different priorities, and then the next one starts talking about expenditures, where the board's able to discuss as a whole with different department heads, their initiatives and funding and whatnot. And then we start moving and discussing tax rates, the capital improvement program, and then we start introducing the actual budget document and going into public comment. So we'll definitely open up the floor to any questions or discussions or any issues with the calendar. But pretty much if the board is having issues with the calendar tonight, we'll get that up online tomorrow so that the public's aware of it.
I just want to reiterate, with the calendar, we're just trying to do as much as we can to break out all of the major sections that we plan on doing with the budget this year. We're trying to, as we've been saying over the past few months, we're trying to break out some things for the committees and capital improvement as well. And we know that we're talking a lot about town tax rates and anticipated revenue as well. So that's why we're trying to just break it out throughout the next 3 to 4 months of the calendar year or the fiscal year. Currently, we have a draft, just working on some other areas like the salaries and the contracts moving forward or things that we need to anticipate. Currently right now for the budget, as on the revenue side, I usually receive anticipated or estimated revenues from state or county agencies later in the fiscal year, roughly around March and April. So those numbers will look similar to what they are for this fiscal year. However, those are some of the things that we're trying to work through, though, as Kyle stated. But we will be providing a draft budget prior to that March 16th meeting. And of course, we'll try to keep everyone up to date with that. Even though this is the next fiscal year, I also will be preparing for the year-end FY 2021 budget adjustments as well. We have a few areas within this current year's budget that we may need to adjust to move some money around to come more in alignment with how our expenses and revenues have come in thus far this fiscal year as well.
So, sorry, this schedule is a schedule of open meetings that residents can attend and will be recorded and put up on the YouTube channel so they can see all of this information. Yes?
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then, so that we're going to be meeting at 11 a.m. on these Tuesdays. And that was Janice, that time was good with you? Sorry, it's loud in my house. I just want to check with you, Janice, because I just have to request off.
Commissioner, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. On the Tuesdays right now, I'm pretty good so that should work.
Okay, I just have to request off, so I wanted to make sure that we were sticking with those times.
But let me say, if that's going to be something that you're going to have to work around, trust me, I can work with you on that, Commissioner Franklin. So if we could just provide a couple of alternate dates that you have in mind, I'm happy to try to work around that too.
No, I mean, my schedule, I just need to be able to tell them that I can't work or I can only work till 10:45 that day. So
okay.
Fine. I provided that information. So.
Okay, thanks for asking.
Any other questions regarding this? Okay, moving on. Excuse me. The next item on the agenda is the business license ordinance. It's for review. It's a board discussion.
So as the board knows, we discussed this a little bit back in the fall, and we kind of did a Band-Aid fix with adjusting the rate for the businesses. It was $300 per year, but the board adjusted to $45 this year in response to the pandemic. And in doing so, I think, and Will can correct me if we've gotten a higher rate of response out of that from the businesses. And then we were also able to add to our business list from the CARES funding that the businesses received as well. We were able to pull some names from the database and send them some letters as well, some businesses who we were not aware of. But back in November was kind of determined that the board, this would be a Band-Aid fix, and the board would refocus and regroup and look back at this in the springtime so that we have a new system, an updated system in place by the July 1st start date of this program, because it runs July to June 30th every year. So as you can see, I've kind of broken out the current categories of what the current budget ordinance or the current business licensing ordinance states and the guidelines we follow, and then some items for consideration that staff have identified or we've heard from businesses, or just some other discussion ways that they've come through. Some of the big ones is being possibly going from an annual license to a biannual license. That would reduce staff workload. We're not processing applications every year. We're not issuing out the Four Wheels, not doing all this pretty much around budget or audit time. And so it's kind of every other year. So hopefully we can spread out the workload a bit longer. The lottery license has to be struck from the ordinance because that is illegal against state law. We put that in there. Town attorney, we didn't ask for it. I'll put that out there. Staff didn't request it. It was something that the town attorney put in there, and then one of the businesses challenged it and reached out to the state and got background information. And then our town attorney pretty much agreed that we can't include that in there. So that's being stricken. The other things to consider is we also require an extra fee for a liquor license. If they have a county liquor license, they have an additional fee of 20% of whatever their county liquor license amount is. They would pay to the town. That doesn't generate a whole lot of revenue. That it only applies to about 3 businesses, maybe 2 restaurants and the liquor store. So if we possibly eliminate that, and that helps just streamline the process, and we're not, it just doesn't confuse anymore. We could put in there that if they do have a liquor license, they'd let us know and give us the permit number just so we can track it. But the extra fee kind of complicates the process because we don't have a set amount for it. They kind of have to tell it, or we have to look up what they pay to the county, and then we put that in the invoice. So it's hard to do a set fee for that. And then also another thing that came up was home-based businesses. If they do have a registered business out of their house, how do we want to handle that? Is that a reduced fee? Is that just a notification and put in for it? So that's I'm just setting it up for the board to discuss. And then also as we look for annexation, giving them possibly a 1-year grace period to be required for the business licensing as the town's both adjusting to the new land and the businesses are adjusting to being in town. I'm just giving it that 1-year grace period. So they're not welcome to Upper Marlboro. Here's a bunch of paperwork to fill out. And we're trying to track that as well. And then also possibly looking into some sort of software management system, not just for business licensing, but a software management system for the overall government operations for the town to help streamline it. Right now, the process is run through our town website and it's all online. So it's pretty efficient. It's kind of hard to use on the back end, but they can fill out the form online and they can pay online, which is a huge boost compared to a lot of other municipalities. And then also included is kind of a potential timeline to get this, revise the ordinance, get it passed, and have it effective by July 1st. But I'll definitely want to pass over to Will if I missed anything, or the mayor, or I know Evelyn is on as well with the business community if I missed anything or any issues. I'll
the only thing I'll add is just to where, as you mentioned, Kyle, with the home-based businesses, I think we're coming across a day in our time where a lot of businesses are not necessarily storefronts, but they're more so doing it out of home or from their office and things like that. And I've come across a good amount of businesses in a town that has reached out to me because maybe a neighbor or a fellow business, a friend has mentioned to them about the business licensing program, but we technically did not have their business address on the books because it potentially was a home-based, and at times we're looking for storefronts and things like that. So that most certainly is an area that we'll definitely need to consider. I will say for the next budgeting year, we're probably looking at budgeting a conservative number for this because of so many businesses at times that we don't know about or that can pop up, as Kyle had mentioned from the CARES Act, CARES assistance for businesses. One thing I do know is so far I probably received about a handful or 10 businesses that now has reached out to me and said that they are no longer in the town of Upper Marlboro or they're out of business, and they are either doing it from home, like I mentioned, out of business. So those are a lot of things that we need to consider. So having a software may assist with the streamlining some things and also potentially having other government agencies for assistance, like the county and things like that. So.
Will, what is the percentage? Do you know what the percentage is of the businesses that have moved to home base? I mean, if you could just, you know.
No, I can't. I can't. Well, I'll say I probably spoke to at least businesses that have reached out to me that said they are home based, but and they still currently here. Probably about 7, honestly. But as far as the ones that sent me a letter or emailed me or gave me a phone call, as I mentioned, I think it's about at least about 10 businesses that has reached out to me. I have a few letters in my office as well that said that they were out of business, and some of them have hinted COVID, or some have, whether that is true or not. But a lot has kind of, I guess, went away from that expense at a storefront or whatnot, and more so taking it to their, their garage or whatnot, whatever the case may have been. If I can get a percentage, or if I can get some numbers on that, I'll do my best to try to get that. But at this time, it's like, some people we had in our data and our reporting, and then other businesses we did not. So, but I can try and see what I can find out, most certainly. Okay.
Is that software, Kyle, that you're talking about that you're looking into for the future? Is that something that's going to help to manage the businesses so that we'll know and have more data to pull from?
Yeah. Absolutely. I know one of the big hiccups right now for, and there's a couple software, Will and myself actually talked today about some different options that he uses, and I've used it some past employments as well. That worked out really well. But the big thing is right now we can't really track the history of a particular business. We have to look at the overall spreadsheet of all the businesses by year and kind of track it through those years. Versus a software system, you can actually pull up one individual business and look at their history individually. I know that's, or put notes in there, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. Big benefits that would do.
Well, it's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
I don't know how you manage it, because I can feel your pain with that, because I handle some things that take the same amount of effort, and you lose a lot of data that way. Also, it's very hard to be able to connect with the businesses and kind of try to market out to those and bring those people back and things like that. So yeah, software would really help greatly with that.
Absolutely. And that's something we'll probably be, Will and myself will be exploring in the next month or so to possibly include in the budget. I don't see it being a huge lift, because usually budgets like that are based off population, thankfully. So our small size could hopefully help keep some costs down. Or if we just, because most of the software could be used for code enforcement, business licensing, and other things that we can kind of add on as we move forward. And it could be things that allow the police department to look in and see some business info, and just some cross departmental reviews as well, so that we have information across the board and people can just log in and see. So that's something we're looking for. We can probably handle it for now, and possibly the next year if possible, if needed, but definitely in the FY23 budget, if not FY22, we should be considering some of it.
Will you guys have some kind of price ranges for us for when we're discussing the budget?
Yeah, we're going to get those. I've reached out to a couple companies. I have a meeting next week to sit down and discuss with them. And then I know Will's mentioned a few, so we'll be getting some ideas. So definitely hopefully by the March meeting, we have some ideas.
Yeah, if we wind up annexing, it makes sense to have things in place. So depending on budget.
Oh, certainly.
Okay, we do need to discuss the amount of the fee, the annual fee, currently at $300. We had, as we discussed, dropped it to 45, but we never came up with a amicable fee after that. 300 is not something that I agree with. I think it is way too high. Our businesses think it's way too high. So I'd like your thoughts on that.
I thought you were going to have like some comparables for us.
What would you like, Sarah? What kind
of?
Well,
I just want to know, like, I want to know what because you and Evelyn work with the businesses, so and you've reviewed a whole bunch of other towns. So
yes, we did, and they run the
gamut. Information.
All of that runs the gamut, and it all is dependent upon a number of things. When you look at we have 600 people in this town. The number of businesses that we have in this town that we can actually, our residents can do business with is different. Okay, we have 7 restaurants in this town. Okay. How often do our people support those restaurants, or is that support coming from out of the area? I'm telling you right now, it's coming from out of the area. So we're not supporting the businesses, but we want to charge them $300 a year to not support them. It's too much money. It's too much money now. I don't think we'll get any more people to pay it than we did the last time. And of the
no, I mean, I'm not suggesting we stay at 300. I just thought you would have a suggestion of an amount that.
Well, I'd like it to go down to 150, and that when I've talked to businesses, that seems to be a more amicable number, more doable number for them. They were very appreciative of us being cognizant of their issues with COVID and especially our restaurants. So I'd like to see that at about 150. I mean, you could go to any website for any one of these other municipalities and see the business licenses is up as high as $300, $400, $500. But there's a different situation in every municipality.
Yeah, I don't think that we're disputing that. I just wanted to know, I agree with Sarah that Commissioner Franklin, in that we were just hoping, or at least thinking like comparison, if there was some research done that we might be able to say, look at those figures and then make a decision from that, or at least not make a decision from that, to let it just help guide us. But just let me say, I'm not against the 150. I think that is a good place to be, honestly. I do agree with Sarah, though, in her understanding of just knowing what other municipalities are doing. So
there's also, you can also go to any website for any one of the municipalities and find that information out for yourself. Okay, we've been doing an awful lot of work when we do these things to make sure that your job is so much easier. You guys have to do a little work on your own too.
Well, the thing was, is if this is your area that you wanted to, that you're handling, it's kind of like you've taken that on, and this is your
the only reason I have taken this
area that you really wanted to handle. So we were just looking for that information from you. It's not to say that we're not in agreement with it. I honestly, again, said I think 150 is very reasonable. I think that's a good place. Based on your observation and your research, since this is your responsibility, this is the area that you wanted to specifically handle. That's why I think that Sarah is bringing that up. And it's a fair question, because this is your area that you're handling. And I know that the size of our town, of course, is that's relevant as well. So we're just looking at the research that you've done, and if you wanted to share that, then we would be happy to receive it. But we do know that we can do our own research.
What you come across as wanting is a nice, neat little package. You won't take my word for it. You want to see all these nice little numbers for it. I've done the research, but I'm not going to sit there and do a nice little package for you guys. You can do the same thing I did.
Linda,
well, Mayor, I'm just saying it's not for us, it's for the
town. Commissioners.
I was going to ask you, Evelyn, what your thoughts were too.
Yeah, my thought at present time is that I agree that your request is not unreasonable, but at the same time, and I hate to keep giving excuses, but at the same time, we have been constantly getting requests to do things. For example, the last thing we did, what we're right in the middle of doing now, and it's for the businesses, is the Prince George's County. I never can think of what we call it. PAMC under MNC PPC, and what we're trying to do is to help the businesses become more viable, help the businesses with what's causing them not to be successful in the town of Upper Marlboro. So we had time crunches that we had to present to them in order for them to look at what we would like them to do for us to help the town businesses. With that said, with the business licenses itself, just as Kyle and Will has said, they have come up with businesses that they didn't even know were in the town of Upper Marlboro. And we're trying to find the person who's responsible for giving us information. So it's a lot of things that we're going through. Also, just as Kyle said earlier with Commissioner Duckett, when it comes to tracking this, it gets to be a headache. So we're trying to get this information out to you so that you can, I'm hoping that that can help you. However, I don't see whether the information that we give you from other municipalities is actually the impetus that we should be thinking about. What we should be thinking about is the town. We should be thinking about COVID. How are the businesses doing it? How are they staying alive? They're struggling. They're struggling. Now, hopefully next year things will get better. We don't know that. So we're going to hit them with $300 July 1st of 2021 when we are basically still in a pandemic situation. $45 was great. And I, as a business owner, I am appreciative of the $45. Can I handle the $150? Yes. Could I handle $300? Probably not in this environment when I have to pay $300 to the state and I have my federal fees too. So I think that we should be thinking in terms of the businesses and how they can handle it as opposed to what other municipalities are doing. Now.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is is where is 150 coming from? And I think what I'm hearing Linda and Evelyn say is 150 is coming from our experience in talking with the business leaders and look, because I did go research what other business license fees were in other municipalities, and it is all over the place. So I was kind of looking for you guys to bring your expertise in dealing with the businesses and kind of make it, because I don't have expertise in dealing with our businesses. You guys have been doing that work. So I was hoping you guys would be able to kind of say, we think this is a fee that's not going to be too high and isn't going to be too low. So yeah, and I'm not asking for a table. I'm asking for an analysis.
You could get a verbal analysis, and I'm telling you right now that a lot of the businesses are struggling, and you can see that as you go through the town. I think they're not making a whole lot of money anyway during this environment. There's a lot of fees, and because they can get a PPP program, PPP loan or PPP grant, it doesn't mean that they are doing well. Now, this is one of the reasons why we wanted MNC PPC to help us with the businesses so that we can get a firm handle on how they are doing. If you know what I mean, we're trying to get a handle on that. But as far as as you say, talking to the businesses, yeah, they're struggling. Why do you think that there are not many people knocking on our doors wanting to open up a business. You know, we may have a few that are doing well, but on the average, no, all businesses are struggling, especially restaurants, as you know.
And thank you, Evelyn, for that. Oh, I'm sorry, Evelyn. Go ahead.
No, so I was just saying, I think, Commissioner Duckett, I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
But you know, but I do think that 150 is reasonable based on my conversations with the business owners.
And you know, Ms. Evelyn, that's what I was, you know, looking for. So I'm not to be spoon fed, but thank you for just like giving us all an overview presentation of what your experience is with working with the town, with the businesses. And then that helps us feel more comfortable when we're trying to make a decision, because we also depend on what that consensus is from you all. So, and that's why we ask for it. So thank you for giving your overview of what's currently been taking place and the information that you've garnered from working with the businesses. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And as you say, we're running on skates here, and we understand that, you know, your concerns, and we try to address them.
Thank you.
If I can put Will on the spot, sorry, from like an economic, I don't know, standpoint, do you think we're kind of on the curve where that's going to get us the most businesses responding, or do you think it's potentially too high, or?
You ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. Were you saying that do I think that lowering it from 300 to 150 is doing the right thing? I'm sorry.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering, I'm okay with 150. I would like the town to bring in as much money as it can, but I would also not like to overtax businesses. And from an economic perspective, there's like a point at which people are more likely not to pay it because it's too high. And you know what I mean? You want to kind of maximize how much payment you're getting. And I'm not asking you to do an economic analysis. I'm just asking if you think 150 is too high to get everyone paying it. No, or if you think it's a good amount.
I don't think it's too high. If the board sets it, I believe that the business community will pay it. I know when we first put it out, and honestly, we did put it out this fiscal year, but I think it was just in a cloud or a blur, and it wasn't as, I won't say important, or a lot of emphasis wasn't really put on it because we were trying to help the business community. And the year prior to that, most certainly we've seen a lot more businesses paid it, most certainly because they understood that it was a ordinance approved by the town, but they also had some complaints or some displeasure with it, most certainly. So I do think that 150 would be a little bit more comfortable for the businesses moving forward. Looking at other municipalities surrounding the town or in Prince George's County, I think that's most certainly in the area for business licensing fees across the other municipalities in the area for our size and what we offer as well. I think one of the areas that we've all been speaking about is to make sure moving forward that we put that they know that the money is going to some solid or some good use. And I know there was a comment in the chat, and I think Kyle had answered it most certainly, that we try to earmark the monies that are coming in for the businesses to, maybe it's for a business grant or business loan moving forward if COVID or if something emergency pandemic happens again, or maybe it is to see some economic development in a park locally to kind of keep on enticing more consumers to come into the town to buy or to get a lawyer and things like that. Well, maybe not a lawyer, but I think we're trying to make sure that we do the right thing with the money rather than just having it go to general operating expenses and uses. So.
Thank you.
Well, if the board is good with these types of steps and some of the stuff we've laid out, and I've been taking some notes, staff can draft a revised ordinance and a revised resolution, because we set the actual fees by resolution, and we can present that and discuss it at the March 23rd work session before we bring it to comment at the April town meeting, and then passage at the May town meeting. The only thing I do want to get some, yeah.
I'll just say that the next time we bring this up, I'll make sure that we have some more numbers to put towards what we're asking or requesting of the businesses. So I'll be able to let you know how many has applied at that time, whether it's check or credit card. And then also based off of the numbers that we have with the spreadsheet that the mayor and Ms. Evelyn have worked on, just find out all of the active or operating businesses, look at those rough numbers and those estimates as well. So I'll make sure I provide that to the board at the next meeting.
And can I say about the home-based business category, is there any discussion on that, or do you want to wait and table it for right now? About lowering the fee for home-based businesses or keeping it the same?
Yeah, I saw that actually. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. I think it's reasonable to have that be a lower cost. I don't know exactly how much lower, but it's a different kind of smaller business usually. I mean, I guess not always, but.
Well, they be in compliance with zoning. So if they can't be running some crazy business out of their house, it has to go by the area as well. Otherwise, we have a whole different issue.
Right.
And this is actually making me think, I don't know if this is possible to put in the ordinance or the resolution, but maybe because this is a new program and we have all these questions about whether the fees are right and how it's working, that maybe for the next, say, 5 years or something, it should be reviewed every year at budget time. Because if 150 turns out to be too high or too low because we're providing more services, I don't know if it's something we should be looking at every year or not.
And maybe the consultant could give us some ideas about how to process this business.
That's a good idea, Evelyn.
Okay.
We could always include language in the resolution. So on the fees in particular, that way the resolution and the fees are much more flexible than the actual ordinance itself. So that'd be a good place to put language like that and say this resolution should be reviewed every year through the next 5 years.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any other questions? We do have to talk with Attorney Best as far as expanding what kind of penalties and enforcement actions that need to be taken when they don't pay, which we did have and have had in the past.
And where does I'm wondering if a software system could track that too, because that would be like an indicator of whether the fee is too high, right?
Usually, honestly, and Will can correct me if I'm wrong, if business does not apply for a town business license permit, they usually are not in compliance with the county and state as well. And I think that's a big factor as well. But just because the county and state don't have a laser focused eye on the town like we do, they do end up relying, like a lot of other municipalities, you need to make sure you're in compliance with the county, you're properly zoned. Like this is kind of, it's not just revenue generating, it's also making sure that the business is operating in compliance with state and county laws as well. So usually I think that's a factor we've seen as well, that they refuse to pay. But for the CARES Act funding, they did have to get in compliance with the county. So that's how we got a better list as well. But I think that's one of the factors to consider as well in it.
Okay.
But yeah, but that tracking would be, software to track would help us evaluate a lot better.
Anything else? Anyone? Okay, moving on to number 4, Charter Amendment Resolution 01-2021. That is for review and board discussion.
I know I've talked to some commissioners about it. They brought up, I know we're adding positions if we wanted to look into some of the other positions as well in the charter, such as Director of Finance and possibly Public Works. So in response to that, I did check some other municipal charters, and they usually only have one person in finance, one reference to financial, like either a treasurer if it's staff or elected. But I have not seen a case of Public Works Director or Superintendent yet. But we could put a clause in there for other staff to be added, which is kind of, it's in there already in the charter. But I just wanted to bring that note up.
Do the roles
right now,
in the charter, like, do those positions kind of, does that give them more weight in some way?
I wouldn't say so. Some charters, like, they don't even have chief of police; they just have police officers. So it's really up to the town how it's said. So it does. The big thing is like the town and city manager position is in there because that kind of helps, kind of more government if they have that. Because some municipalities just have like a clerk treasurer or something like that if they're smaller than us. So it's really tailored to how the municipality wants to function. But all the positions are given power by the ordinances, like the personal ordinance, and then some other ordinances that we pass. That refer to those particular positions, and then obviously the job descriptions that get approved by the board as well. Those help or make it more official.
Yeah, I just was kind of wondering why Darnell's position and Will's position weren't really in there, but it sounds like it's just kind of what necessarily needs to be covered legally.
Yeah, like I said, for like the director of finance versus treasurer, some municipalities, the treasurer is the director of finance and a staff position.
You mean me?
Yeah, so that's,
okay.
But since right now the charter doesn't require the treasurer to be an elected position right now. So it's really municipality by municipality and how they're set up. Honestly, but I have not seen anything about like a director of public works or anything like that. I've checked about 5 or 6 charters our size, and it's mainly town clerk, town attorney are the 2 definite ones. They're the ones that go back ages, when most towns just had a town clerk, or most counties just had town clerk, city clerks. But those were the 2 main ones, and then you see if they have a town administrator versus a town manager, and starts leaning toward their form of government, then you see like some sort of public safety, so either police officer or in some cases sheriff, not in Prince George's County, or in our case, we're establishing the chief of police, the office of the chief of police. So it's really different, but definitely town clerk, town attorney, or in some sort of financial position are in each one of them.
Okay.
And if I can reiterate that, I mean, just kind of further define, the main thing is, you would ask Commissioner Franklin about it having more weight. The more rules you put into the charter, the more restrictive it is for government going forward. If there's things that happen that, technology is a good example of things that come along that change processes. And we're talking about the employee handbook as job descriptions change. And my own personal experience is job descriptions change according to the particular talents that different individuals bring to an administration. So basically the idea is your charter should be as mean and as lean as possible, but the ordinances are what they are to work in harmony with the charter and expand and get more detailed, because an ordinance can always be redone by a future administration and things like that. Not so easily the charter, though, as you're all coming to learn how much goes into just one change. So I just want to make sure that you know it doesn't have anything to do with the size of a town, about the charter. Some you may discover when you look at other charters, they seem too overdone, but maybe they've been around so long that it's a major consensus that they like it this way. But in another town, you know, they may need to add things, and I believe this is a good move for police chief, definitely. And the size of the town did matter for the town of Upper Marlboro, because as with projects and especially annexation, you need more administrative guidance in there. Mm-hmm. And splitting it administrator and clerk is the best way, mm-hmm. given grants and all.
That makes sense. Sorry. I guess I have one other thing that's kind of not related specifically to this charter amendment, but kind of charter amendments in general. Because again, budget season. I was wondering if there is some kind of consultant that, because when I was a consultant to towns, we did this, that would come and look at your charter, and if you wanted to make certain charter amendments, like we've talked about the 5-person board, or we've talked about moving elections into the fall so no one's out in the cold, that kind of thing, and just kind of come look at the charter and help us make the amendments in the most, I don't know, efficient, modern, proper way. I know we have the attorney kind of helping us draft these, but I just thought it might be something for us to consider, having someone professional, not like on long-term retainer, but just to kind of do a single project and help us make sure we're doing this right.
I agree with that, Sarah, especially in that part where you were discussing some of the additions or the considerations for like the 5-member board and so forth. I mean, that all of these things will really help us in terms of being able to have better discussions amongst each other, to actually handle town business and do what we need to do. So a lot of these things, that's really good. I agree.
Personally, I think we've got that in the attorney and our professional association.
Which part is that you're saying that we have, Mr. Williams?
Our town attorney and our professional association. They're just municipal charters. They're the best. I think they're the best, and no, the lawyer's not free, but our association we pay dues for that aren't outrageous.
So how does the municipal association support us in doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do. They have lawyers on staff, I believe. I know that's where, well, if not aspiring lawyers, that's where our attorney worked before entering his own practice, or he actually went into a firm and then to his own practice.
So we can consult with them?
Well, you need somebody who just really knows state law, because this is what our charter is under. They really need to know state law. And I think as soon as you start getting into, when you get into attorneys, you do pay. So I think we would be looking at, if we were to be consulting somebody on it, it pays to have somebody who's most familiar in the evolution of the charter of our town.
Yeah, I guess I think what I'm thinking is less on a legal, so I don't think I'm not thinking a lawyer, because we have a lawyer, but so what we would do, and I didn't ever get fully into this part of the business when I was working, but we would look through the charter and find out any areas that might need to be improved, or if the town wanted to change the structure of something, we would try to help them find an efficient way to do that, and then it would go to their town attorney to make sure everything was going through legally. So it really wasn't, you know, in the case that we were, you know, codifying all the ordinances, then they were paying us a lot of money. But if we were just kind of looking over their charter, it wasn't a big expense. If that makes sense.
And codification is something we've looked into. I know Dave spoke with a couple firms last year, and we had it slated, I think, $10,000 in a budget for projects. So that codification is just to bring everyone on board, is to take, right now we have a bunch of individual ordinances governing the town. Codification would take all those ordinances and build it into one online document that's searchable. And so it's just one cohesive legislative item. And so I know David talked to a couple firms, but then obviously COVID and budget hit, and that was kind of the first thing that got cut. 3 firms he talked to. So that's something that, yeah, definitely the codification, and like if it is just if we do bring a firm on just for codification, and then it only costs just a little bit more to look at the charter. That's an interesting point.
All lawyers.
Yeah.
All of them specializing in code and ordinances. So that's true. That is a perfect resource too.
Okay, I will check with MML and see if they have someone who can review our charter or is willing to review our charter. The Maryland Municipal League has all the charters, so they're very familiar with all of them. So.
The heads up, the charter is good at one point in that I may have mentioned, but Senator Peters is passing a state bill based off of our charter and the replacing of vacant council or commission seats that we require should be put in with X amount of days. So he's actually introduced. I was wondering why he was so curious about that when we met with him a couple months ago. And then it goes forth and he puts legislation in place based off the town of Upper Marlboro charter, which I never thought would be a role model. Statewide.
It was really a problem this summer, huh?
Yeah, we tested that to the limit, but just a fun little tidbit. It's moving through. It's moving.
Yeah, I mean that was also an area I was kind of concerned about. But if it's that excellent, then maybe just getting 5 members so that we don't have situations like the one we ran into over the summer, because that was rough on y'all and Linda.
Okay, anything else? Hearing nothing, I see we have come to the end unless there is something someone wants to bring up. Any one of our participants in this meeting can bring up anything at this point. So if anybody has a question or a comment, please do so.
I just want to let everyone know that WSOC is doing a lot of work around town. We're coordinating with the Granite on Old Crane Highway. And then there's a completely separate WSOC firm on Water Street doing work as well. So we're working with them and we've helped them out. They're staging equipment. The Old Crane Highway crew, Granite, they're staging equipment at the Church Street parking lot because it's gravel and they can take the weight of the truck. And in turn, they've kind of helped us and gave us information on their projects and timelines and stuff like that. So I know myself and Chief Burst talked to them a few times. And then obviously we have the Water Street project going up. And yeah, that's the current issue going on right now because it's limiting traffic in a couple different major roads around town.
Yeah, I had to do some wonky things to get home the other day.
Okay, hearing nothing further, I move that we close this evening's meeting. It is now 8:14.
8:14.
And I thank you all for coming.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.